welcome again to the Elixir podcast. Today we're talking to Tom, who is in London. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Helen, how are you?
I'm very well. We're very pleased to have you on the show today. Which poem have you decided to read?
So the poem I'm going to read is called Mother, Any Distance, and it's by a poet called Simon Armitage.
Wonderful. Okay, so would you like to read it to us?
Yeah, sure. Mother, any distance greater than a single span requires a second pair of hands. You come to help me measure windows, pelmets, doors, the acres of the walls, the prairies of the floors. You at the zero end, me with a spool of tape, recording length, reporting meters, centimetres back to base, then leaving up the stairs, the line still feeding out, unreeling years between us. Anchor, kite. I spacewalk through the empty bedrooms, climb the ladder to the loft, to breaking point, where something has to give. 2 floors below, your fingertips still pinch the last 1/100th of an inch. I reach towards a hatch that opens on an endless sky to fall or fly.
Well, Tom, that's giving me shivers all over, and especially with the emotion in your voice about that poem. So tell me, why is this poem important to you?
Yeah, I do feel emotional actually talking about it. I'm a school teacher and we teach an anthology to our students, and it contains 15 poems, and the broad theme is love and relationships. And a number of the poems are about love and different forms of love. And then there are 6 or 7 poems that are about family relationships. And we're really asking our students who are 15 and 16 to sort of access emotions that perhaps they won't have had the experience of. And I say to my kids, you have to find your way into the poem. And it might just be one line, it might just be a word that just resonates with you and enables you to access the poem. I feel quite emotional talking about this. For me, this is the one poem of the 15 that every single line resonates and means an awful lot to me. And I remember I would always teach the poem initially as an unseen. So I would give the 15 poems to the kids, one at a time, obviously, and sort of give them 10, 15 minutes in pairs to try and sort of crack open the poem if you can. But I remember what I did with this poem. The first time I taught it, I said to the kids, I remember saying, guys, I know this is really unprofessional, but I really need to ring my mum. And I said, please don't say anything. I'm going to put her on speakerphone. And I hadn't told my mum that I was doing this. I'm going to put her on speakerphone and I just need to talk to her. And my mum is now 86. And this is a few years ago, but she was elderly. She sounded incredibly frail on the phone. And I was talking to her and the kids were just looking at me. And I said, Mum, she said, is anything the matter? I said, it's got no food in the flat, Mum. And she said, no food? And I said, no. She said, have you got time to go to the shops? And I said, oh, not really. She said, why don't you come round tonight? She said, I'll go to the shops and I'll cook us both a meal.
Oh.
And the kids in the class were sort of looking at me and they were stifling it. And I said, Mum, don't be silly. I just wanted to show something. I just wanted to prove something. I'm in front of the kids in the class. And I said, I'll explain later. And I put the phone down. And I said, what have you established from that phone call? I said, sir, your mum will do anything for you. And I said, well, make a meal. But she is prepared to go to the shops to get some food and to cook, even though I can easily do that. And we then read the poem. And there's different ways of sort of accessing different elements of the poem. And I said to the kids, you've got to find, as I said earlier, the part that really resonates with you and a way in. And to do that, we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to expose our feelings and emotions and really explore what the poem means to us. And I've always tried to do that with poetry with the students that I teach. And the poem is full of metaphor. Ostensibly, it's about a mum helping a kid move out and go and measure their new home and the excitement around that. But what resonates with me is, the title, first and foremost, Mother, and then there's a comma, any distance. And this idea that And I know I'm lucky in terms of my relationship with my mum, because certainly being a teacher, you understand that not everyone is this fortunate. But however far away you are, your mum is your mum. And, she loves you.
Yeah, this is so true, and it is a universal truth. It really, they say that, putting this in a different perspective, that on battlefields, the most common last words of a dying soldier
Yeah.
is for them. You know, one of the things that I think is so wonderful about you is that you're teaching youngsters how to access their feelings. And so often, but just the way our education works, is we don't teach any type of really emotional literacy except through teaching poetry, actually, where for a few moments we allow young people to really be honest with themselves and others about how they're responding emotionally to something that they're reading. So I think
Yeah.
this is amazing what you've done there, just with that poem, and it will probably be something that they'll remember. That when we look back on our schooling, often there's just a couple of moments that have, like you say, cracked something open for you. And it's an amazing feeling. Yeah, when you told me you were reading this poem, and I went to it, I think it just inspired this incredible nostalgia for our parents. I guess the thing that I'm going through at the moment with my children is that they leave, and quite rightly, absolutely correctly, they just don't look back.
Mm.
Why would they look back? But the mothers are left there feeling as if they've had a limb torn from their bodies as,
Yeah.
as their children grow. And often people people at my age are stuck between these two generations, a generation that's passing out and into the ether, and a generation that's passing out and into the world. And these ties, these measuring sticks, if you like, become really, really important to us and attach us to a sense of ourselves and to a sense of love.
I wish I was as articulate as you. I think that's really kind of you to say what you said at the start, because I have said to the kids, and I'm conscious of being a man standing in front of them, that it is okay to access emotions and it's okay to be vulnerable. And, you try and do that, and you don't want to expose the kids, and you don't want them to do something that will sort of lead them to feel too exposed. But I guess if they see that in you, then there might be a learning, and that's fine. I think, if I'm being completely honest with you, there is a real reason why this poem resonates, and it's not just the love of my mum. There's, as I said at the start, there's maybe three different parts of the poem that really stand out to me. And the first is this list at the start: any distance greater than a single span requires a second pair of hands. You come to help me measure windows, pelmets, doors, the acres of the walls, the prairies of the floors. And it's a metaphor for the multitude of tasks that a mum will hopefully, without any kind of concern for herself, help a child with. And it's interesting, those areas grow larger. You've got the windows at the start, and they culminate with acres of the walls, prairies of the floors. However small or large those issues are, your mum will be there, and she'll be standing by your side, helping you. And when I put the phone down to my mum, I told the kids an anecdote that I went round to my mum's, and I made the mistake of lying on her couch. That wasn't the error, but I had holes in my socks. And unbeknownst to me, my mum had noticed. And the next time we went round there, she'd gone to Marks and Sparks and bought me 3 pairs of socks. I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "No son of mine around with holes in their socks." And then just this idea that her at the zero end, me with a spool of tape, as you've talked about, Helen, recording length, reporting meters, centimeters back to base, then leaving up the stairs. It is that idea of, your mum, hopefully, again, I say that hopefully deliberately, but wanting to be kept abreast of your news. And, nothing is too insignificant. She wants to know how you're doing, and everything's of interest. And I play cricket, and unfortunately, most of the time I play cricket badly. And she'll say to me, "How did you get on this weekend?" And I'll say, "Oh, I've got 2." And she'll say something like, "Well, 2's better than none." Or, I'll get 11. And she'll say, "Oh, better than last week." And I just feel this exasperation because it's such a poor score. But to her, A, she knows the news, but B, she wants to revel in your success, limited as it may be. But
and be encouraging in the way that you are probably encouraging towards your students. It's lovely. That's where you got it from. It's like she's
yeah,
planted the seeds of your future you in by just being your mum,
yeah. Now, at the risk of exposing myself too much, but I guess to explain a lot of my emotion, my brother and sister passed away a couple of years ago, and family life was tough, growing up. And my brother had a lot of difficulties. And there's these they're split with caesura, anchor, kite, these juxtaposing ideas. The kite, the freedom, the ability to go anywhere, but the anchor sort of keeping you rooted, that stability, that support. And this is what I say to the kids. I'm not one of these that says there's no right or wrong answers in poetry, because sometimes they could say something. I'll say, well, no. But some of the kids see that anchor as a restriction, but I see it as mum being a constant support. And, it hurts me to admit this, but, we turned our back on my brother to some extent, and my mum didn't. And, she was the one constant in his life, and whatever difficulty he had, she would be there for him. And it's almost metaphorical in its own way, because he lived at the top of a steep hill, and she used to get 2 buses to him. And as I say, she's elderly, my mum, and she used to, climb up this hill to see my brother. And that's obviously not in the poem, but it's almost a metaphor for her constant support. And I guess when he passed, and, I'm exposed to this poem again, you look at it with different eyes and with fresh eyes, and a different understanding and appreciation of what she did.
That's absolutely amazing. And what a beautiful tribute to your mother. And I'm really glad your brother had that. It's however dark his days were, to be able to depend like that on his mum was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like I say, there is the innocence, the excitement of starting anew. And, I can remember buying my own first home. But as I say, to sort of come back to the start, it's this idea of accessing the poem, finding your way into the poem, finding the thing that resonates for you. So much as I acknowledge this anxiety about moving out and the excitement in there, the sort of spacewalking through the empty bedrooms, and there is that sense of excitement, this sense of renewal and starting anew, the endless sky, this blank canvas that we have. And I would encourage my kids to always write about that. But for me, I think I've been really fortunate with my mum that she's taught us love. She taught her kids, the 4 of us, love. And that's what I see in the poem.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And in fact, as you say, these poems are about family in a wide sense as well, because this poem is about both you and your brother, the one who flew and the one who failed, and
Yeah.
and the constancy of your mother in that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. It's so moving to listen to you. And would you mind very much reading it to us again, so that our listeners can hear it in the context in which you've given?
Of course. Mother, Any Distance by Simon Armitage. Mother, any distance greater than a single span requires a second pair of hands. You come to help me measure windows, pelmets, doors, the acres of the walls, the prairies of the floors. You at the 0 end, me with a spool of tape, recording length, reporting meters, centimetres back to base, then leaving up the stairs. The line still feeding out, unreeling years between us. Anchor, kite. I spacewalk through the empty bedrooms, climb the ladder to the loft, to breaking point where something has to give. 2 floors below, your fingertips still pinch the last 1/100th of an inch. I reach towards a hatch that opens on an endless sky to fall or fly.
That's truly amazing, Tom. If anyone ever doubts how important poetry is in people's lives, I will send them to your podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Helen.
Absolutely wonderful. And it's been a huge privilege to listen to you.
Just to reassure you, Helen, and any listeners, I don't speak to them about my brother. I don't speak to the kids about my brother. It's just as I say, in the aftermath of his passing, it's obviously looking at the poem with a slightly different perspective. But yeah, I think a simple but beautiful poem.
Like, this is also something that I find so amazing about poetry as opposed to other forms of writing, actually, is that when you go back to a poem, it's always different. You can always find something new, or always some part of it tugs at you in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's its great strength. Tom, thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. It's been a huge privilege, and all I can say is thank you.
Thank you. It's been a lovely opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Elixir podcast. My name is Helen Wing, and you can find more information about the poems that we talk about on my website at helenwing.com. If you have a poem that you would like to share and would like to appear on the podcast, please contact me at helenwing@me.com. Thanks for listening.